I tell people out in the world that I teach piano, they often express regret in some form that they didn't learn as a kid. And then they're surprised when I tell them that I pretty much exclusively teach adults online. There are a lot of myths about the need to start a musical instrument as a kid. The reality is you can absolutely start playing music as an adult and succeed. And in fact, adults have certain advantages over kids. So I want to talk about 5 of those advantages that you have if you are an adult watching this video and you want to learn to play the piano. You have some advantages over, say, your child who may be starting lessons with a local teacher. Your first advantage is independence. Now, this is partly from the teacher's perspective. You know, when I was working at a local music studio and teaching tons of kids, it was maybe 1 in every 10 or 1 in every 20 school-age kids who really wanted to be there. Whereas with adults, every single adult I work with wants to be there because you're in charge of your own time. And it may sound obvious, but wanting to be there, wanting to learn the instrument and practice and continue to show up is the single most important thing you need to succeed in learning a new skill like playing a musical instrument. Another advantage to your adult independence is your ability to choose your approach to learning the instrument. You might already have your own goals about what you want to do. You know, some of the adults I work with really want to play in a cover band. Some of them have no interest in doing that. They want to play alone at the instrument. And the basic musical foundation for both of those students is the same. I mean, that's the premise behind the online course that I created at pianofluency.com, that so many adult students actually need to build those same foundational skills that are flexible and you can use them for different things. It's also true, though, that when I work with people in our live class who have these slightly different goals, like do you want to play in a band or do you want to mostly play alone? What style do you want to play in? It helps to know your goals because it can affect where you focus your effort and your attention. So independence is a real advantage, that you don't have to do what your parents say. You don't have to do even what your teacher says. You get to choose your teachers. You get to choose your approach, and you get to make it match exactly what motivates you. And as I said, that motivation is really key in being able to learn this new skill. Your second advantage is access. This is more true now than at any time in the past. You know, I mostly teach people online now, and that simply was not possible 20 or 30 years ago in the way that it is now. If you're an adult student, you have the option now to create your own combination of learning online, learning from resources like books, and learning with people in person. And that's what I do. You know, when you listen to somebody like me, Talking Head on YouTube, you should always pay more attention to what I do than what I say. And the reality of what I do, I'm a beginner on a very difficult instrument, the violin. And what I do in order to learn is a combination of all of these things. I use online resources on the violin all the time. I think they're incredibly useful. I also take in-person lessons, and I'm playing in a local ensemble. I mean, you know, the best way forward is some combination of all of the above. But I'm so grateful for the online learning platform that I subscribe to on violin. It's called violinlab.com. Shout out to Beth Blackerby, along with other great places like Tonebase, and there's so much great free information on YouTube. And I'm finding that combining that with also seeing a local teacher who can give me feedback in person and then playing with people in real life locally, combining all those things together is so powerful. So this is your advantage as an adult. You know, for school-age kids, sometimes they can use things like online courses or online resources, but it tends to be more difficult for them to navigate than it is for an adult. You want to be careful as an adult that you don't get totally caught in YouTube rabbit holes and just watching passively people talk about piano. You know, as much as I'm glad to be teaching piano on YouTube and on my course, like, you got to make sure that you're actually playing the instrument. But that said, there's so much value to having access to good information, and it is more accessible now than ever, especially if you're an adult. Advantage number 3 is your maturity, and this relates to the point about independence. But you know, typically a 10-year-old kid is not going to have their own strongly developed musical taste. Whereas most adults do, especially if you care enough about music that you want to learn to play piano. And there's so much value in that. Often, if I'm working with someone privately, the first thing that I'll have them do is make a playlist for me of 10 of their very favorite pieces of music that they would love to play. And having that guiding light really can inform the way that you practice, the way that you're motivated. You can't really do that most of the time with a 10-year-old kid. So that kind of maturity, that connection to the music, where you may already have really important life experiences attached to some of these songs. When you hear a song about heartbreak, you've actually experienced heartbreak. That's not necessarily true for the 10-year-old kid. And that's an advantage for adult students. It gives the whole project of learning the instrument a different meaning to you. And I think it's connected to why so much of the time the motivation in adults is completely different than it is for kids. Advantage number 4 is your intellectual superiority and your ability to understand the difference between good and bad practice. So we might call this strategy. You have the advantage of being able to more intelligently strategize about how you spend your practice time. So even if you're not able to practice a lot more than, say, a teenage kid who's spending all their time trying to prepare for conservatory auditions, the reality is actually that many adult students find a way to practice even more than those kids. Especially I work with a lot of people who are entering retirement and they have hours a day to practice, which is so fun. But even if you don't have that much time to practice because you're a working adult and say you only have 20 minutes a day after work or an hour after work, you can be very deliberate and strategic with how effectively you use that practice time in a way that a kid could not, because they really just might not be able to grasp how some of these more effective practice strategies work. And your last advantage is patience. This is obvious, like if you're an adult and you're used to hanging around kids, you know that you have a lot more patience than they do. Although, you should be careful that this doesn't actually become a disadvantage. It can be a double-edged sword. Some adult students are surprisingly impatient. And I actually see it as the biggest obstacle for most adult students if they don't recognize the kind of patience they're going to need to succeed in learning this new skill of playing an instrument. Remember the actual time frame that we expect to see with school-age students. If a kid starts playing piano at age 5, they might start to sound competent by the time they're age 10 or age 15. So if you're an adult and you're starting at age 55, you shouldn't be expecting those results way sooner than age 60 or age 65. And for an adult, that actually feels like a relatively short time frame, but still, for people who are really excited about learning this new skill, a lot of times you hear totally unrealistic timelines. It's like, I want to sound like Ray Charles in 6 months. That's not necessarily going to happen. But you might actually be able to improve faster than that 5-year-old, right? If you're realistic about how you're comparing yourself to the kid that's discouraging you because you hear that 10-year-old kid who can outplay you, remember, okay, if the 10-year-old kid has been playing for 5 years and you've only been playing for 2 years, if you are even at all in the same ballpark as the 10-year-old kid, you're making way faster progress than the 10-year-old kid. And in my experience, most of the time that's the case, that adult students who are serious about practicing and showing up consistently, they actually make faster progress than I tended to see with like the 5-year-olds or the 10-year-olds that I used to teach when I taught tons of half-hour lessons to kids. And the important part is just to actually keep in mind how long you've been playing, not how old you already are or how competent you expect yourself to be based on how competent you are in all the other areas of your life, but just purely look at when did you start playing the instrument and where are you now? And in my experience, adults can actually progress more quickly than kids in most areas of developing their musicianship at the piano if you just measure purely in terms of time like that. So make sure you keep all those things in mind. You're an adult, you're capable of understanding this stuff. And even though emotionally it can be hard, that there's always going to be some 15-year-old kid who can outplay you if you're starting the instrument as an adult. If you keep these things in mind and you tap into your reserves of adult patience, it's going to be a huge advantage for you in your enjoyment of learning the instrument and in your progress at the instrument. So there you have it, 5 advantages of starting piano as an adult. And it's as I tell people when I run into them at parties and I'm telling them about my education work, it really is never too late to start. If you wish that you had started piano as a kid and you think that it's too late, you can always start playing a new musical instrument. And it's one of the most exciting things, actually, I think you can choose to do in your life as an adult, to pick up a new skill like this, where you're going to be a beginner to start with, and then you'll see rapid progress, and it's a thrill. Thanks for joining me in this video. I hope if you are drawn to the idea of starting piano as an adult, or you're early on in your journey starting piano as an adult, that you do follow those dreams. And if you want to learn more about working with me as a student in my Piano Fluency membership, head to pianofluency.com. I'd love to have you. Either way, you can subscribe to this channel for more free piano education content. And again, thank you for joining me. My name is Ted with Piano Fluency.